Welcome to IPAF's webinar on fraud and theft prevention. My name is Richard Whiting. I'm UK General Manager for IPAF. Happy to be your host for today's webinar. Fraud and theft continue to pose significant financial and operational risks across the access and rental sectors. This webinar brings together a number of industry experts to help companies better understand these risks and take practical steps to protect their businesses. During the sessions, our speakers will look at common fraud and theft risks, practical prevention measures, the role of insurance, security initiatives, and collaboration with law enforcement, and how businesses can reduce exposure to financial and operational loss. I'll just draw your attention to the Q&A function. If you have a question for us, please put it in the question and answer box. We will try and answer them as we go along. If we run out of time, we will pick up with you after, and subject to time at the end, we'll be able to put some of your questions to the panelists. So as I say, we have a fantastic lineup of speakers today. First up, we have Mark Brown. So Mark has worked in insurance for 37 years, initially working for Commercial Union in claims for 15 years. His last role was that of a loss adjuster. He spent the last 22 years working in client relationship and management roles and decided on a move to Aon Leeds early in 2025, where his role is Client Management Director, part of the leadership team, but with client relationships across multiple industries remaining a key element. So I'll hand over to Mark first. Thank you, Mark.
Thank you, Richard. So I work for Aon. We are, I think now the second biggest brokers in the world. We partner with IPAF as a member to provide insurance information reviews for you as members. What I want to run through today is some basic insurance cover. I think everybody probably knows the covers that they've got, but there's a few bits and bobs that is just worth noting that you might not be aware of. And then just in terms of terms and conditions, how that might affect the insurance cover that you've got and the things you need to be careful of, particularly in relation to sort of fraud and theft. So just starting on the basic plant insurance, which is in most of your cases will be contingency because you will be expecting the hirer to have their own hiring plant insurance. So your very basic policy coverage is that of just fire and theft. That may be restricted to forcible and violent, will involve collision, overturning. It's not covering things like mechanical breakdown, electrical breakdown, deterioration, and tends to be probably on the smaller end of your kit. The next one up is sort of a broader all risks. So it may cover some sudden and unforeseen accidental damage. Again, fire, theft, collision, overturning, malicious damage, but more importantly, accidental damage as well. Again, you're still going to be excluding wear and tear, corrosion, inherent defect, faulty workmanship per se, but any damage that comes from that may be covered under the policy, again, depending on specific wording. And you will get exclusions such as overloading. So if you put something that's far heavier than the manufacturer's guide states and the machine becomes damaged, again, that's deemed as misuse, and you need to be following the manufacturer's recommendations. You've got the, obviously, extended add-ons, hiring plant, which is where you'll be looking for your hirers to arrange their own insurance while they've got the platforms. If you hire under CPA conditions, make sure that they are watertight, because the CPA conditions help you in terms of ongoing hire and things like that. So you need to make sure the hire is fully aware, if it is CPA, if you are a member of the CPA, that they're the terms that you're working under. You can insure for things like increased cost of working or a loss of revenue. If the platform is stolen or is damaged by the hirer, again, that's something that you would have to request and ask for. Road risk motor liability. This is one of the areas where sometimes people get caught out. So under the RTA Act, if you're having wheeled equipment on the road, such as an example would be like a forklift, but obviously any wheeled device that you've got, while it's on the road, it should really be insured for road risk. If they were caught using it on the road, the police could be involved, and depending on the officer, he may choose to issue a ticket for having no road insurance. You can insure if it's just got a serial number and not a registration plate, so that in itself is not an issue. Third-party liability, again, for the use of the plant while they've got that on hire, while they're using these platforms, ensure that obviously there's a strict definition between your liability and their liability as the hirer. Often when damage occurs, everybody blames everybody else, so it's worth just being aware and understanding what covers you've got in place and what you need. Theft by fraud, obviously, as it explains, and I'm sure the guys later on will go into a little bit more detail, it's a massive issue at the moment in the construction industry. Pieces of kit going missing, stolen, organised crime groups are involved with this. You've got various methods of basically carrying out this fraud. So impersonation, using fake identities such as a director's passport, set up a hire agreement, carry on as normal. Clone companies, replicating the details of a genuine company so you can pass credit checks. Phishing for information, using small email addresses or impersonating genuine employees, try and gain a trust with you. Obviously, falsified documents. What they're giving you is fake. It's not real insurance. You can get online and quite easily or get hold of an insurance document. There are PDF softwares out there that will allow you to alter that document. So they can actually change the name or anything in that. They can add that it's got hiding plant cover, but you can usually tell if it's been done. But some are very, very good fake documents. Initial payment deception. So they make a few payments. You start to get a good history with them, and you start to trust them, and then they basically take a machine and never come back. And then obviously a fake hire. It's delivered to site. They may even have put signs up on the site to make it look like it's a genuine building site, but actually it's not legitimate, and it's gone. Now, just to share some examples of the theft side of things, not always is everything as it seems. I'll give you an example of a client of ours who hired an access platform. They were electricians. They were working on the Corp Arena in Manchester. Left at lunchtime on the Friday, all locked up and everything. Came back into work on the Monday, and the platform was missing and assumed stolen. And it was reported to insurers and the police. The claim was subsequently dealt with and paid. And some months later, at the end of the contract, when they were building the Corp Arena, all the contractors started to leave site, all the machinery started to leave site, and lo and behold, the access platform was sat in a corner and had actually been stolen by another contractor who borrowed it, who didn't want to hire their own, hid it away during the purpose of the contract, and no one was any wiser that basically they got this kit. So when things go missing, it's not always the case. In that example, that it has actually been stolen. It may have been borrowed, in inverted commas, by someone on site. So if your hirers do have something and it goes missing and it's on a big site, have a wander around, have a look round. Can you find your kit? Is it there? Obviously, it should be pretty easy to spot. But you know, they're the type of things that people will do to save money, basically. T's and C's on insurers' policies all vary. There will be terms and conditions on your policy in relation to hire and what insurers expect you to have in place for best practice checks. And as part of that, the main thing is identity verification. So what can you do? So if you're working with a company, anyone can access company's house via the internet. Are they a genuine company? Are they posting regular updates? It's not a dormant company, and you can find out from that if they, who's the directors, who are trading. So you can ask certain questions if you are entering into an agreement with a company. If it's an individual or a sole trader, ask for a photocopy of their ID, the passport, the driving license, proof of their address, utility bill, a bank statement. You may well get people who are decorators, who want to hire it for the day, just so they can access sort of the higher windows or wherever they're painting. So these kind of people will, obviously, as you're aware, will hire these. Credit reference checks, you can pay small amounts of money to run credit checks on a new customer that you've not dealt with before. Even check trade references from other suppliers or hire companies. Don't be frightened in asking for information. If they're a genuine company, then they'll not be frightened, basically, of shying away from giving you that. Ensure you've got the correct hire documentation and contracts in place, that these are signed hire agreements using your industry recognised terms. Verify all the documentation is correctly completed, that it's signed. You keep detailed records of all transactions and communications. Insurers, when they appoint a loss adjuster or they deal with it from the office, and there are conditions on your policy, the first thing they will be looking for is all the evidence of these checks. Where are the details? Where are the signed agreements? Where are the documents that you've got? And they will use that to decline a claim if you've not got that information together. So it's vitally important that you do keep the evidence when you ask for it, and hold it on file until that hire's ended. Or even if you are hiring again to that company, make sure you've got some sort of history with them that insurers will expect to see. Obviously, from an insurance point of view, you're looking to see their own insurance, the hired-in plant cover. It's got the right cover, the right sums insured, the right limit. If they're hiring something off you that's worth 50,000 and the limit's 20, then that's not good enough. Insurers, in a lot of cases, will expect the hired-in plant cover to mirror your cover. Payment validation. Check a payment's been received, not just take it that someone's actually paid you, that you have got it, it's in your bank account. And be cautious about people and how they want to pay. Is it ringing alarm bells? Physical checks and handovers, confirm the identity of the people that's collecting it, ask for some photo ID, who are they in relation to the company owner, just some sort of proof again. Record the vehicle registration that they come to fetch it on if they come to pick it up. If they've got a trailer, record the registration. That's just one way of just trying to keep a control over that. And try and be there. Don't just leave it out for someone to come and pick up, or at least try and meet that person on a face-to-face basis. And one thing that we get throughout the insurance industry all the time is know your customer. Understands the reason why they're hiring that. Look out for suspicious behaviour. Is it an urgent request? Is it I need it this afternoon? Is there reluctance to provide ID? Or they're requesting high volumes items that they've never traded with you before? Is it an out of area hire? All these kind of things should ring alarm bells. And all the things I've mentioned on that slide are things that insurers or the loss adjusters, when dealing with any kind of theft, will be looking for if you've hired something out as proof, basically, that you've done the checks and you know what's what. Obviously, the security, I'm not going to go into much detail because there are speakers further along the line, but GPS technology, obviously, is one of them. Security measures such as Caesar, live tracking, again, that's going to be mentioned later on. And work with industry members and law enforcement. Share information, obviously. If you've had an attempted theft and they've not got away with it, but they've tried, report that. Don't just, oh, well, I've got it. They didn't get it away this time. Report that. Share it across all the hire companies in the area, because if they didn't get away with you, they may well be off to try and do somebody else. So text your mate down the line, or text to the companies, or just make them aware, and share that information, so that they're probably going to try and do it somewhere else. So at least try and stop that by identifying them as a potential risk. As I said, I won't go into any more information about that because that's going to be covered later on in the presentation. From just from a review point of view, obviously we do offer part of IPAF membership is we'll review all your insurances for you. That's complimentary. Check your covers, check you got your right procedures in place in terms of the requirements for insurance, the terms and conditions that you may or may not be adhering to. And my email address is on there, and that can be obtained from IPAF website, and we'll do that absolutely free of charge for you. I'm slightly ahead of time, but obviously I built questions in, but we'll leave that towards the end. So that's me done, Richard.
Thank you very much, Mark, for attempting to make sense of the minefield that is insurance. I know it's one that many of our members have questions about. One of the last points of your slide there was about sharing information, which has teed me up nicely, really, to mention the Combined Industry Theft Solutions committee that we have in the UK. The remainder of our speakers, Andy, Dave, and Kevin, along with IPAF and a number of other insurers, industry bodies, trade associations, do exactly that. What I'm going to do now is introduce the next speaker who can demonstrate some of that. So next up is Andy Huddleston. So Andy's the head of unit for the National Construction and Agricultural Theft Team, NCAT. So Andy grew up, for our worldwide listeners, Andy grew up in County Durham, which is in the northeast of England, and joined Durham Constabulary as a police officer in 1995. He's worked in a wide cross-section of roles, from neighbourhood policing and 24/7 response to VIP armed protection, surveillance and counter-terrorist operations. He's received several Chief Constable commendations, two of which were for the innovative use of covert tracking technology to catch machinery thieves, and for his leadership as tactical firearms commander during a protracted armed siege. So wide and varied career for Andy. Since 2018, Andy's been the national operational lead for rural crime, the theft of construction and agricultural machinery. In April 2023, Andy established and now heads the National Rural Crime Unit, which is tasked with supporting forces and representing rural policing, including the theft of construction equipment across the UK and abroad. Andy was a key driver and advocate of the Equipment Theft Prevention Act 2023 that sought legislation to see construction and agricultural machinery in the UK fitted with forensic marking and immobilisation as standard. In His Royal Highnesses the King Charles III's 2026 New Year's Honours List, Andy was deservedly awarded the King's Police Medal. So I hope that's a good introduction, Andy. I'll hand over to you to tell us more about NCAT. Thank you.
Richard, first of all, can I just check you can hear me okay and you can see the script, the slides?
Absolutely spot on. Thank you, Andy.
Okay, lovely. I'm not going to cover any introduction other than say thank you very much. That's the longest introduction I've ever had. I'd probably overview what we do. So as Richard said, I'm head of the UK Policing's response to theft of agricultural and construction equipment. And we are uniquely, I think for anywhere in the world that I'm aware of, a fully funded team by the industry. So my unit is funded by the NFU Mutual, an insurance company in the UK that covers 75% of farms, and the CEA, who Dave will speak from them later on in terms of how the Construction Equipment Association has a group of donors that fund what we do, and you'll come on to see what we do, but also crucially part of the CESA scheme that will be talked about today, how that's been fundamental in making sure we've got a policing response nationally to theft of construction equipment. Okay, so that's a quick breakdown of what the team does. So where we are, we're spread across the UK. I'm not going to highlight anything other than the fact that we have got a financial investigator, Liz Bagiri, because whilst we do look at getting stolen machinery back, we are now finding that one of the most impactful things we can do to tackle people who steal plant and construction equipment, and it does include platforms as well, is to go after the money. That's where they find it hurts them the most, and so much so we now have our own drugs dog and cash dog and weapons dog, Buddy. He loves the smell of £50 notes, and he's been really effective at helping us tackle thieves, but not just get machinery back, but also take the money off them as well. Just a very quick whistle through as to what our unit does. We do everything from checks at borders, and we have access to telematics from a lot of the tracking companies and the manufacturers. Some companies are better than others. I have to say that some of the American companies are not helpful when it comes to sharing information about location of stolen machinery. But others, the likes of JCB, predominantly because it's UK based, we can get lifetime access to that machinery telematics, and it does help us locate stolen machinery. We specialise in identifying machinery that's had its identity altered. We support all 43 UK police forces with warrants, so that's getting into premises and getting stuff back. As you've mentioned, we do a lot with getting money back, and that's £130,000 that we found hidden in a guy's house who'd been involved in the theft of machinery. We work internationally across into Europe. We do a lot of recoveries abroad as well. We're supported by a lot of the tracking companies because they obviously want to work with us to get machinery back. We do a lot of work with government and legislation, and we'll touch on that briefly as we go through. The Combined Industry Theft Solutions has been mentioned. That is a phenomenal setup of a group of industry members who want to work together to tackle crime reduction and theft issues. And that would be something in any country I'd recommend looking at that. And lastly, these are the packages that we produce for police forces to help them actually investigate the crimes when they're under such demand. In terms of the theft figures for platforms, these figures really are just very much a snapshot. They're probably 50 to 75% less than what they should be for the UK, and that comes predominantly down to recording systems and the various names that the lifts and the platforms have, and not being easy to search on police systems and find them. What I would highlight is the fact that of all of these that my team are aware of from last year, only one of them has ever been found. And I would put that a lot down to the fact that they are very difficult to identify once they've been stolen. And I'll come on to the benefit of what we've got for other machinery, where we've got a much higher return rate in terms of identifying them as stolen through the use of Caesar. Just to give you an idea, that's been touched on already by Mark, and his advice was very sound around machinery theft. This is just one example of one site. So this is just one organised crime group we were looking at, who was ordering machinery in the name of BZ Services. If anybody does deal with BZ Services, please feel free to put them in touch with me. But they're basically taken people's names and addresses and falsified accounts. We are seeing as well, by the way, in terms of the use of AI to falsify and produce passports, photographs and passport images to convince hire companies that they are legitimate when they're not. But as you can see in there, we've got a couple of platform lifts that were part of this theft, ultimately, of machinery in the West Midlands area. We are working closely with the hire industry, and this is some advice, and I'll mention, and I'll put it up as my last slide at the end. This is advice that we are giving to hire companies to reduce their risk of theft, to reduce their risk of fraud. And there are some very simple things in there that can be done that are quite simply not being done. And I will go as far as saying we need to change the industry approach to being a little bit greedy, dare I say that, in terms of getting a hire, another hire in, and particularly for somebody that works on the sales desk, they are paid because of every hire they sell, they get their commission. And we need to, and they don't lose that commission if it turns out to be a fraudulent hire. So they need to do more due diligence, and things that have been touched on already by Mark, but we're mentioning here to reinforce it as well, about where it's delivered, where it's dropped off. The delivery drivers are often key because they'll often say, why were we dropping this piece of equipment off there? Like the top right-hand corner there, it was a bit of wasteland behind a housing estate, and that was the second generator that got dropped off in that location to somebody that didn't look like a builder and mysteriously disappeared. So if the driver thinks it's suspicious or wrong, then act upon that. And one of the things we are encouraging is put CCTV on your wagons and even body cams for the drivers, because it then gives us something to work with to follow this up in terms of actions. We are seeing an increase in the cloning of machinery. So this is where we take identity from a genuine machine and turn it into something different. That works for some manufacturers' machines because they have very poor identifications, very poor serial number stamping, things like that. Where we have machinery that's marked with CESA, and I'll come on to CESA, and it's going to be talked about in detail later on by Kevin and by Dave. This is the industry scheme. We have got, as a police, a 100% success rate in identifying something that's marked with CESA, and I think that is quite remarkable. And again, I would encourage any other country that's looking at and has got an issue with theft of any type of equipment, whether it be excavators or platforms, they consider marking it with a forensic marking scheme, the likes of CESA. The clone plant, this is just another example there of what we're doing to recover it around the country. And these are all stolen bits of equipment you see in front of you there. It is big business, folks, and there's a lot of money to be had from it. We are international in terms of what we do. You can see there stuff that's going out to Bulgaria, Germany. We're getting stuff back in Poland. We've seen stuff going to Lithuania, and definitely there are things that are going out to other parts of Eastern Europe, including Russia as well. And it is fair to say that we have seen an increase in the theft of machinery going abroad, and this is mirrored by my counterparts in Europe as well, because of the demand that has been placed upon second-hand sales by Russia. So, for example, the sanctions placed on Russia mean that manufacturers, the likes of John Deere, Caterpillar, JCB, all that, etc., cannot sell to Russia. As a result of that, the second-hand market and stolen goods demand for machinery to Eastern Europe has increased. So that has definitely been an issue and a draw on us. And any of you from Eastern Europe, from Western parts of Europe, may well recognise what I'm talking about there. I'm going to just briefly touch on this, as I've already mentioned it earlier, but this silver triangle is the CESA marking scheme, and Kevin and Dave will touch on this, but it is fundamental in terms of us identifying plant and machinery. So for the police officer that went in and saw this Manitou telehandler on the left, and it could easily be a platform access as well, we know that every Manitou, every JCB should have one of these silver triangles on. It was clearly missing. That is enough for us as the police to seize it as suspect stolen, and then through the CESA technology, identify its true identity. So it is phenomenal in terms of what it does. We also uniquely provide training. I'll come back along with SITS, the Combined Industry Theft Solutions. So with our partners, we provide training across the UK. 1,300 officers we've trained since October 2022. We do that in conjunction with Data Tag, who deliver the CESA scheme, and with our partners across the UK, and it is very successful. As a result of that, more police officers are stopping a construction equipment, looking at it and identifying it as stolen. And I would advocate, if you're going to do something, this again, work with your police force, help fund some training, and you will see the advantages of doing that. We have strong links with ministers and Home Office departments to try and seek change. All I would say is it is a slow process. We have seen some advantages, and as a result of the work we've done over the last 3 years, now every quad bike in the UK has to be sold with forensic marking on it to allow us to identify it when it's stolen. We did try to get this to all construction agricultural machinery, but the ministers bottled it, is the best way I would put it, and didn't go that far. So I would have liked to have seen that done. It would have helped us reduce theft and that return machinery, but there was a political decision not to do so. So there is some experience we've got there if any other countries are looking at what we can do to help influence government change, because unfortunately manufacturers will not do this unless there's a commercial advantage to it. They won't do it for the advantage of the high moral ground of reducing theft, but they will do it, for example, if the likes of CESA, you get a discount from an insurer if you're fitted with it. But I could go on, but I'll say no more on that at the moment. We're now looking at better UK police powers. So as a result of the work we've done with industry, we have now been able to get a power for police officers hopefully later this year, where if a machine is stolen and tracking to a location, a middle ranking officer can authorize entry using force to return that machine. And that's going to be a really powerful tool for us going forward to help make it harder for thieves to get things away. In terms of what we do, so we are a team of 5 people, and just to give you an indication, when we started in 2023, we recovered £6.2 million worth of stolen equipment. 2024, that went to 10.5, and last year we covered £15.9 million worth of stolen equipment. This year already we are up to 3.6 million, and in the last week alone we've recovered another £750,000 worth of equipment. So we're well up and nearly towards 5 million, and we're not even out of January. This is not me bragging. This is just the fact that when you work together in partnership with the industry and with police with a little bit of funding, it's amazing what it can be done to help that. And this included in here will be the likes of platforms and lifts that we are recovering across the UK, and including, you'll see some of those international recoveries as well. For last year, the last 3 years, that's a bit of an overview of it, of the officers trained, the international recoveries, and what we do. Last slide I'll leave for you is this one here, just to, if you take nothing else away from today that will hopefully help you, is looking at the likes of this. It can be obtained from the CPA, HE, or the CITS website, or from ourselves, just some advice and some guidance. And I'm happy to work with anybody who's interested in this sort of stuff. And these are our contact details, which I'm sure Richard or the team will share afterwards.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. Yeah, some scary figures in there, and a bit of an eye-opener, I guess, for many. As you rightly said, NCATS is unique, but the success it's having through that kind of industry partnership, I appreciate for our global audience that this is a bit UK-centric, but this is a global issue. What's happening in the UK is happening everywhere. So I would also advocate that kind of sharing of information, partnering with other trade associations. Just a quick point on the reducing risk of theft and fraud tips that Andy put up there. IPAF also supports that. So what we'll do is anybody that's registered, we'll send you a copy of the aid memoir so you can see what those tips are. But thank you very much, Andy. Moving on, just a reminder for anybody that wants to ask a question, please put it into the Q&A on the website, and we will try and pick those up. But we'll move on now to Dave Luscombe. So Dave is the Special Projects Consultant for the Construction Equipment Association. He has over 35 years experience in the automotive, powered two-wheeler, motorbikes to me, I guess that is, yep, and construction equipment sectors. Dave's a recognised leader in public affairs and industry advocacy. Since 2011, he's driven major UK construction initiatives, including the nationwide rollout of the CESA security and registration scheme, which both Mark and Andy mentioned. Now supported by over 85% of brands and hailed as the industry's most successful anti-theft programme. He continues to oversee CESA, ECV, the environmental, and partnerships with NCAT and specialist police teams to advance security, innovation, and environmental responsibility. So thank you, Dave. Over to you.
Thank you very much. I'll just share this screen and get it up for everybody. There we go. Let's get that on there. Right. Can everyone see? Let me put it in presenter mode. Can everybody see that okay?
We can see your other screen.
Right. Okay.
We can see it, but
right,
you've got two screens, haven't you?
Yeah, well, we'll get rid of that. We'll solve that problem. There we go. Right, just let me share this.
No problem.
Yeah, there we got that. Everybody see that or not?
Yeah, we've got it now. Thank you very much.
Thank you. Well, thank you for the introduction, Richard. Yeah, I must remember to simplify those intros when we have to write them. So we've heard quite a bit so far about CESA from Andy, and we work very closely with Andy and NCAT to create what we like to refer to as an industry solution to an industry problem. And our first speaker there, from an industry point, an insurer point of view, demonstrated quite clearly that as an industry, we're subject to the same threats and challenges around theft and fraud as the agricultural industry and the construction industry. And it's very interesting that a number of other trade associations, from survey to power generation, are all talking to us because this is a theme that's running for everybody. So it's a privilege and a pleasure to be able to talk to everybody today and showcase what we've been doing as an industry for 15, 16 years now to try and find a solution to it and find an industry solution to an industry problem. Kevin will talk to you. Kevin Howells, who will be on after me, is the CEA's represents Data Tag, who are the delivery partner for the CESA scheme for the industry. And he will be talking to you in more detail about the CESA scheme, the technology behind it and how it works. But I will just cover off a few little points about it. And really, it's about taking you back in time to a time before CESA existed, where we had a significant problem with theft. We had a recovery rate of less than 5%. So effectively, lots of stuff was being stolen and it was disappearing. And on the at the time where we won the bid for the Olympic back in 2007, the focus was on not only building the stadium, building it in a sustainable way, primarily because if we were subject to high levels of plant and machinery theft, it could impact on the delivery of this very, very important and, I guess, defining event for UK. And many of our international viewers will recognise, if they've had the Olympics in their country, what a defining event it is for their country. So to see that delayed because of an epidemic of plant theft was something that no one wanted. So we sought a solution as an industry. At the pointy end of this, we were challenged by the police as to what we wanted, and we joined forces with the police to create what is now known as CESA, which tackles the fundamental issue with all of our equipment, and that is, if you know, you know, and if you don't know, you haven't got a clue. And what I mean by that is that you all are experts in access platforms. You are all experts in your products. People in the construction industry similarly understand the difference between a backhoe and a loading shovel, and the same in agriculture. For a police officer who's challenged with many, many things, it's a digger, it's a lift. And so when they're challenged with trying to identify this asset, they fall at the first hurdle because they have no idea what they're looking at. And inevitably that puts it in the too difficult box and nothing happens. And criminals exploit the confusion, they exploit that vulnerability, and they will target our products because they know that they can transport this material, these machines around the country with impunity, knowing that in plain sight, no one knows what it is. So the CESA scheme aimed to address that by bringing identification and an easy, simple way of identifying an asset to our equipment, effectively making a piece of plant machinery, an access platform, a generator, as easy to identify as a car. And we do this by the addition of some very, very basic technologies. Kevin will cover off the detail behind it, but this triangular label now has become synonymous with plant security in the UK. It's effectively the registration number of the machine. By simply searching that number, the police officer can find out everything he needs about the machine. And later on in the presentation, I'll be able to demonstrate to you how this actually works real time. So I'll let Kevin go into the details of what all these technologies are in his presentation. It isn't just a label. There are some covert technologies that are also put on the machine, some microchips and microdots. And again, Kevin will cover off in great detail what all these are. But what it means is that that machine is identifiable on a forensic level using covert technologies and a very straightforward physical level that you can just see with what we refer to as the Mark 1 eyeball and identify it through a police accessible app for our database. The initiative was quickly embraced by the industry. So all of the brands you see on screen now all fit this as a standard fit or a customer option. And most of the customers ask for it. So we see this everywhere we go now. Once you've been made aware of what the triangle looks like, you can't help but see it on every tractor that you see and every piece of plant equipment that you see. And there we have some images of it on the various colours of our friends, our industry partners. So the yellows of JCBs, Merlots, Manitous, John Deere's, Valtras, you name it. These are all machines that you will be familiar with. And the difference between a UK version of a machine and maybe an overseas version of a machine is that label and the thievability of it and the identifiableness. Is that identifiable? Is that the right word? The ease of identification. 700,000 systems have now been sent out into the marketplace since we had started this initiative back in 2008 when it was launched. And it is the biggest and most successful initiative of its kind in the world. It's evolved a little bit now, and we now have a situation where we have an emissions label. So when we capture the data from the manufacturer, we create a color-coded label that shows what emission stage it is using the EU type approval number on the engine. This has gained attention from all around the world. In May last year, I was in Lima, in Peru, talking to a delegation of South American people who were looking as part of their CALAC Clean Air Initiative in South America, looking at an initiative like this. And the same people are back in the UK at the end of February, where we'll be speaking to them again about ECV. And we do labels, and again, Kevin will go into more details on this, but we even embrace the zero emission idea. And the great thing about this as well is, because it's asked for by some of the major projects, so you can't put a machine onto a HS2 site without this label on it, it's linked to the security element of CESA, meaning that if the criminals try to de-identify it by removing the labels, they actually reduce where it can be used and technically devalue it as well. So that's the background to it. So we have CESA. And what I'm going to talk to you now is about how it actually operates. The pictures you see on scene now are from some live police checks and multi-agency road safety operations that take place in the UK. Now, these particular photographs were taken at check sites around the West Midlands, where police officers will pull in towed machinery on trailers and then will seek to identify it. Data tag provide technical expertise to help the police in this, but generally speaking, the police officer can read the label on the side of the machine and put it into something called Rapid, which is an app that Kevin will talk about. And alongside everything else that they do, you see there the police officer, well, that's a DVSA official there, using mobile technology for everything they do. They can get the keeper details of that, and more importantly, they can find out whether there are any stolen markers against it. What that means is that with a CESA system fitted, it can take as little as 2 minutes to verify the identity of a machine and understand whether there are any theft reports related to it, which means that we can crack on, we can look at lots and lots of kit, and it really incentivizes the police officer to investigate and to look at it instead of it being a challenge. Yeah, we can do that, we can ID that. And so when a piece of machinery comes on site, the cops will be all over it trying to identify it. If when they look at the machine, it hasn't got CESA on, to try and identify that machine is a 4 to 8 hour operation. And I'll explain to you why that is. So again, some more images of what those labels look like in real time, all on the back of these pieces of equipment, and we can find out what they are. Again, on all types of different machinery. The one on the bottom left there, the 44 Alpha Delta 6 Bravo, it's a very, very old machine. So that label there is probably around about 8 years old. So you can see it's weathered quite well, but it's still got the numbers on it. Really important in the harsh construction environment. And even some really obscure pieces of equipment there that mostly, you imagine a police officer looking at that and deciding that he's going to try and figure out what that is. Completely hopeless. With CESA, he can do it quite easily. 4 times more likely to be recovered. You heard Andy Huddleston say earlier that his team have had 100% success in using CESA to identify things. It's far more than that. So we know that with CESA fitted, the chances of getting it back are significant. Now let's look at some of the machinery that you guys are more familiar with. You'll all recognise this kit. These photographs were taken on a check site on the M6. It's a DVSA check site at Doxey in Staffordshire. So all these pieces of equipment were pulled in by police officers as part of this stop check. All being transported in plain sight. All the drivers were delivering it to projects, and that the equipment had been booked. Could have been taken off site, some of the vehicles liveried, some not. So the officer trying to identify this looks around and he can't see CESA. So now he has a challenge. What else can I use to try and identify this asset? And that's his options. He's got serial numbers, he's got information from the hire company. He's got a QR code there he can scan to log on, log off. He might be able to telephone the hire company and say, have you had this piece of equipment stolen? But that's fine if it's in office hours, but if it's on a Saturday, a Sunday, if it's on at 3 o'clock in the morning, completely useless. Even if he has the serial number, where would he go with that serial number to find out whether the thing had been stolen or not? The answer is nowhere. And inevitably, faced with lots of other checks to do, a busy check site, lots and lots of things to look at, the inevitable consequences, he just puts it into the too difficult box and moves on. So that piece of equipment there, worth many thousands of pounds, highly valued by the thieves, as we've heard about already, but highly thievable as well. And with no primary identifier, it's a wonderful opportunity for a criminal to make a lot of money very quickly, very easily, and with very little chance of getting arrested or stopped. I mentioned earlier that the police can access the data by portal on a smartphone. Again, Kevin will go into this later, but this has been a game changer for us because the Rapid app allows the cops instant access to all the data that sits behind the machine. Kevin will go into data about that and explain how we use the data as well. You've heard the word SITS on this presentation already. That's the Combined Injuries Theft Solutions. It's an industry group that we work very closely with, both ourselves and the AEA and most of the trade associations in the UK, including IPAF. And we, or SITS, work with DataTag to provide training in CSER to police officers. Why this is relevant, and the next slide will explain that a little bit more, is that not only is CSER a theft initiative, but it's also an initiative that generates revenues. So the systems are paid for by the manufacturers to be fitted onto product, but a percentage of those revenues is diverted off to fund police training delivered through SITS. So not only do we provide the equipment for the police to identify stolen plant, we also provide the training for them. And we've trained hundreds of officers over the past few years, probably 600 cops in the past 2 years. And that training program, again, will continue. We've committed over £30,000 for 2026 to provide training for active police officers in CSER, understanding how it works. So this is just a good example of 2023. So 810 officers trained in 10 months, so more than 600. I was wrong on that. So we have every year the police provide a plan of where they need to go, and it's delivered by SITS and it's funded by the industry using money from CSER. The National Construction Agricultural Theft Team, Andy Huddleston and his team report to the CEA CSER board on a monthly basis and also on a quarterly basis. And again, money from the sale of CSER is used in partnership with the NFU Mutual, other insurers, and other trade associations combined together to generate a fund of over £1 million to fund a 3-year initiative. And we actually fund NCAT. So NCAT is the UK's only privately funded specialist police team. So we sort of provide almost a complete wraparound. We create the product that helps the police, we provide the training to help the police use the product, and we fund a dedicated unit that provides specialist input to the industry so that not only do we try and stop it getting stolen, but when it does, we have a team of people that can deliver it. All of this is only possible because of the support of manufacturers and also other trade associations. So the opportunity to speak to IPAF today is very important because if IPAF members embrace CSER the way they do, or the way that other associations have, like the Hire Association Europe, Construction Plant Hire Association, as AMPS are doing for power generation, it will only mean that we can do more and more with NCAT, with police training, and actually take the fight back to the criminals. And this is something that, again, that Andy mentioned to you earlier. So that is it. That's a quick whistle-stop tour of CSER and what it is. It is the complete solution. The reason the CSER logo is round is because it is a circle. It's a full circle. And without that full circle of everybody being involved, we can't achieve the success we do. And it was lovely to be able to talk to IPAF members and encourage you all to embrace CSER and join us on that circle. Thank you very much, Richard.
Brilliant. Thank you, Dave. Thank you for highlighting in particular, the difficulties the police have in identifying equipment. I'll say no more on it. I'll let Kevin pick that up, but we'll hand over, move along. So Kevin Howells was a driving force behind a number of leading industry security initiatives, pioneering the official Caesar scheme, now seen as the industry standard, as you've heard from Dave. He works closely with police and law enforcement, including Interpol, and leading insurance companies, delivering specialist training, intelligence support, and innovative security technologies. And also holds senior positions within multiple influential groups and industry associations, including CITS and many others. So I'll hand over to Kevin. Thank you, Kevin.
Thank you, Richard. I'm just checking because I can't see you now, but can you see my screen and the presentation?
Perfect. Yeah.
Okay, and you can hear me okay. Well, thank you, everyone. And just echoing Dave's gratitude to you all for allowing us some of your time to talk about some of the industry initiatives we've been doing in the UK. My name is Kevin Howells. I'm the CEO of a company called DataTag. We're the chosen delivery partner of the official Caesar scheme. And as Dave has already suggested, this is because we were suffering from about £1 to £1.5 million worth of plant and machinery theft in the United Kingdom. And we think, based on recent figures from the European Rental Association, this figure can be as much as almost 9.6 million, almost 10 million euros right across Europe. It's a huge issue. Mr. Uddleston has explained that a lot of this equipment is heading east to areas where equipment is being used for rebuilding and where areas that customers are not allowed to buy certain machines. So we don't see that ending anytime soon, unfortunately. The recovery of those machines were very, very low. And as Dave said, this all came about because of the Olympic Games in 2012. And the fact that how does a typical police officer identify a machine? There are so many different types of machines and brands out there, it's difficult. Very easy for an officer to identify a vehicle with a VIN number in the windscreen and with a registration plate. So the Caesar scheme was launched, as you know, as Dave said, 2007 and 8 for the 2012 games. It is owned by the Construction Equipment Association. We are the chosen delivery partner. We had to go through a very tough and difficult tender process in order to deliver this on behalf of the industry. And it's really managed and scrutinized every single day and every week by the industry. But it's not just the CEA. I'll show you in a minute some of the other organizations. But what we do have with regards to the technology, and this was a system that was designed by the police for the police. So Dave has already suggested that we have tamper-evident triangular registration plates. This is made of a material that if you try to remove the plate from a machine, maybe to place it on another one or to try and change the identity, it breaks up into small fragments. It's designed like that, so that it's a bit like a VIN label. We have unique QR codes allowing people to use their smartphone. We've developed lots of secure features for the plate itself, including an anti-forgery font, so that it's very difficult for someone to change, for instance, a 1 to a 7 or a 0 to an 8. It should be quite obvious. And then, as I've just mentioned, there are lots of other hidden security features within the plate. But because this was a system that was designed by the police for the police, they wanted a way of being able to contact us at any point, Christmas Day, New Year's Day, and get through to someone, not just a computer, where they can ask these questions. But going through the tender process, the police also wanted to know, well, what happens if they do actually remove those ID plates? Well, we've developed various cutting-edge technologies over the years in motorcycles and marine products and bicycles. And so not only do you have these ID plates, you also have secure, unique microchips that are hidden in things like the acoustic foam, the headlinings, the seats, the wiring looms of the machines. Each one's unique. They cannot be changed or the codes zapped or removed. And it means an officer can check these hidden transponders or RFID tags hidden within the machine. We will have on our database where those tags are hidden. But the police said to us, well, what if they were able to find those? Then we also have hundreds and hundreds of tiny little plastic discs about the size of a millimeter. On each of those discs is a unique number, and those unique numbers link back to that machine in terms of a VIN number. It would mean that a criminal has to remove every last one of those tiny little dots, and they're very difficult for them to find. However, a police officer just needs to find one to be able to confirm the true identity of the machine. The police also then insisted, well, what if they did find all of those dots? So some of the technologies we've helped to pioneer over the last few years, we've added in a forensic DNA, like we all have a unique DNA, into the glue that holds these dots on. So failing that we cannot find microchips, microdots, then an officer can take a sample of the glue and get it analyzed, and we can confirm that's maybe that small component, the EC unit, belongs to that machine. And more recently, we've now added in a new ultra-high frequency transponder technology. Although this one looks like it's made of carbon fiber, there is actually an antennae in there, and there's lots of other security features linked to the QR codes, and there's a number of these now hidden in the machines. Now, the great thing about these, as you've just seen, going back to that particular label, there's no battery involved in that. The power comes from the reader, which you can see here on the right-hand side. And we've been getting some great read distances from this, from between 15 to 20 meters. In fact, the biggest distance we've been able to get were these passive transponders, in a way, are almost over 30 meters. Now you can see there from that image there from that well-known dumper manufacturer, that's the sort of distance. And that would mean that police officers are able then to be able to maybe scan items in sheds, in buildings, in vehicles. And we are working on some great technology which would allow us to put readers by the side of roads and ports. So Dave Morgan mentioned about, since we had this huge database of machines, and with the ever increasing issues of emissions, we've now added in an emissions triangle. And again, these triangles also have hidden security features. So if you were to remove the larger triangle you can see there, officers can still identify a machine from the emissions triangle. And here in the UK, we have lots of projects now where they insist that you have to have CESA ECV fitted. Dave already showed this slide, but it's something we're very proud of. All of these manufacturers now fit this. So approximately 90% of all the equipment that is now supplied into the United Kingdom is fitted as standard with either CESA and CESA ECV. And lots of companies are also doing it as a option, but that's becoming more standard. So as you can see there, from JCB to Hitachi to Kuchi, Manitou, Komatsu, and people like that, it's most manufacturers. Although the system is owned by the CEA, it is also supported by the Agricultural Equipment Association. That's made up of manufacturers like John Deere and Manitou here in the UK. AMPS is the association connected to power generation. We also work closely with the Hire Association of Europe and the CPA. And the very fact I'm here today on the IPAF conference would obviously indicate that we work closely with IPAF as well. We have lots of support from the hirers. Some of those brands may not be familiar outside of the UK, and I will explain what we're doing more in Europe in a minute. And of course, you can see some of the more well-known plant hirers there who really insist when they're buying equipment that it has to have something like CESA, and most of the equipment now all comes fitted with it. Dave has already mentioned that we've just surpassed a bit of a milestone. And only a few days ago, working with Kawasaki in the UK and their quads, we confirmed that they were the recipient of the 700,000 system, which was a staggering amount of systems over the last few years. So it is the largest database of its kind anywhere in the world. And what we're trying to obviously demonstrate to you here on this conference today is that it makes it so much easier now for an officer to identify. I do know that lots of manufacturers will have trackers and immobilizers, and criminals are finding ever more sophisticated ways to get around that. Sometimes they can remove them, sometimes they can use jamming technology. The great thing about this system, it does complement all of that technology, but it makes it much easier for an officer at the side of the road to identify it. Now, obviously, an officer looking at that should be concerned that there's something wrong. And based on the reports that you can see there, we can confirm that was stolen. When a criminal is able to remove the ID plates, because of the way it's made up, if they are able to remove them, you can see that it does actually leave a mark. And since most of the equipment now has Caesar fitted as standard, it would be the same way if you driving down a vehicle, a car or a commercial vehicle down the motorway without the number plate. Hopefully, it would attract the attention of the law and police officers, and that's where we've got to, I think, with regards to Caesar labels. But here in this instance, where you can see on this particular machine, the criminals have had a good go at removing it, scratching it off, managed to get most of it off in one piece. But using the microchips that have been hidden throughout the machine, in this instance here, it's in the seat, in the wiring loom, we're able to identify that particular machine and then all the other identity connected to that. On this particular image you see here, both of these machines were actually stolen. And although you're looking at a VIN plate there, which looks very convincing, that is actually a fake VIN plate. And the criminals did a very good job of actually, I suppose, faking the serial number. And after some sort of investigation from the police officer removing the paint, you can see that they've actually been able to do a convincing job of changing the VIN number. Now, that is something that we're seeing all the time. But of course, with the Caesar system using the microchips, and you can see the larger dots there, and the DNA, which fluoresces under an ultraviolet light, it makes their jobs far easier. Dave's already mentioned how much easier it is now to identify a machine at roadside, taking minutes rather than hours. Officers trying to ring factories to find out, could you tell us who the customer is? When was it sold? And some details. So it just makes it far easier now. And Andrew's already said earlier that, and I'm grateful for him allowing us to share this, that every time they come across a machine that's been fitted with Caesar, they have a 100% successful identification rate. Now, there's been a bit of talk about something called RAPID. This is something that is another acronym standing for the Registered Asset Police Information Database. And because we as an organization, we get all of the information coming in from the manufacturers. We're also one of a few companies in the UK that get the police national computer data supplied to us by the Home Office. Only a handful of companies have that. Plus, we also get the new version of that called Law Enforcement Data Services, working with Andrew and his team, who they work with Interpol. We get a lot of the insurers' data as well. Because we know that sometimes policing systems can be quite old and quite antiquated, we were able to develop a system that allows us to put all of this information, which is critical, in the hands of police officers and law enforcement. So what we're now seeing now, and it is being a bit of a game changer, is it allows officers to sign up. There's no cost to them. They can access this 24/7 as well as our call center, put in their unique numbers. Allows them to do searches online. They can click on certain sections of the database where they want to look at motorcycles or marine or plants and machinery. In this example, you can see on the screen, we're showing you what happens on a motorcycle one. They are able just to do what we would call a fuzzy search, putting in this instance, just a make and a model. And from that, they're able then to search for only stolen bikes only. And on this particular model, they came up with 20 bikes. That allows the officer then to look at the details. We've blurred out many of the details here for privacy. But it allows them then to look at the registered keeper details, to pick up the phone and to call them, and the system details, looking at VIN, make and model, when it was circulated, stolen, etc. But what that allows us to do, and this is why it's been such a bit of a game changer, we now have here in the UK over 2,300 officers actively using this every single day. And it's made a massive difference to them. Since the initiative started, which is just about a year ago, we've had over 25,000 searches. We can drill down into this. This is a screenshot, but this allows us to look at where the activity is, what items they've been looking at, and you can see from those pie charts at the bottom what they're looking at, construction or other types of vehicles. We can drill down into each one of those. Now, normally we would only probably receive about 400 to 500 calls a year from police. thousands from customers, but here you can see how it's made a significant difference. We can drill right down into what they were looking at, who it was, and what machines. We can look at force, and obviously this is looking at the Cheshire and Constabulary and how active they've been, which is very interesting. This is a map of a heat map of the UK, which allows us to see which forces are using it the most. And you can see here Northumbria Police, followed by Scotland, and the number of searches they're doing in Cheshire. But this is the most important one of the slides I'm sharing with you today. Of those 25,000 checks, almost 3,600 assets, machines have been viewed, of which 1,320 have been identified as being stolen. Now, when you've got that granularity of being able to see that, that allows Andy and his team to start looking, and with CITS to start training officers where we need this. There's also a video library in the background. I just got a few slides now as to what we're doing into Europe. Because this equipment ends up in Europe, and we are now supplying probably 60 factories around the world already with this, with a lot of this equipment heading for the UK, parts of the Netherlands and Germany. These are the manufacturers we're currently working with, where we're supplying this system already. But we've been working with other organizations in France in particular. One organization is called Argos. This is a not-for-profit agency funded by all of the French insurers. They have a team similar to Andy Huddleston's team, made up of between 15 to 20 ex-police vehicle examiners and gendarmes. We've already trained those officers, provided them with equipment and access. They will have access to Rapid. This is right across France, and their technicians actually train around 4,000 French police officers every year. So we've got some exciting news and developments happening in France, as well as Spain and other countries. So just finally, as an initiative, it's a very powerful theft deterrent. It's a visible identifier, a standardization on that. It's very easily fitted. It's not easy to remove. There's a one-off cost. Unlike other systems like tracking systems, once it's fitted, there's no monthly costs, there's no annual cost. Once it's fitted for life. It cannot be jammed, and it can be transferred to the next customer. So when compared to trackers, you can see it complements everything a tracker can do. So that's the end of my presentation, and I think I ran over by 1 minute on that, Richard. So I hope that's okay.
Yeah, I'll put that down to my good hosting skills, Kevin.
Yes, please do.
Thank you very much, Kevin, and thanks for the exciting developments with Rapid. I know you're right; it has been a bit of a game changer in the UK. Fantastic to see that that's extending into Europe and hopefully other parts of the world. We've got about 6 minutes left. We've got a couple of things. First of all, thank you to Matt Fray. I'm just going to read it out. I'm not sure if Andy's read it, but he just says, "Can I take the opportunity to thank Andy personally for recovering over 120,000 in stolen plant last year, with Gavin Hughes as a lead investigator. They were outstanding in how they recovered our plant in Wolverhampton. I won't read all the rest, but it's evidence of it working in practice, which is fantastic, and supporting the industry. We do have a few other questions, and I'd like to thank Jan Garofalo. I hope I've said that correctly, Jan. There's a number of questions here. I won't direct them to anybody. I'm just going to see who puts their hand up to answer them. So the first one, on passive versus active protection. The CSER scheme is primarily a passive identification system. System. In an era of professional organised crime, how does this system effectively prevent a machine from being physically removed from a site compared to active immobilisers or geofencing solutions?
Okay, Rich, I'm happy to cover. There's a few in there. I've had a read through what Jan's put. Some really good questions from Jan, and the bottom line is security, like on any machinery, is more than just one thing. It's a suite of things. So it needs the forensic marking. It needs ideally tracking. It needs ideally immobilisation. So the first thing we would say is immobilise the machinery so it can't be taken in the first place. and there's a variation as to how good immobilization is or not. And if you go onto YouTube, there's some very good tutorials on how to defeat immobilization from some of the major manufacturers. So there's always some form of solution to try and tackle it. That's for immobilization. For the geofencing, and I know Jan mentions later down the telematics from a lot of the manufacturers. The telematics that manufacturers put on is for productivity. It is not for theft. So they are fantastic for productivity, but most of the telematics we can disable within a matter of seconds, either by pulling fuses out or wires or batteries, and they are commonly overcome. So I would say they have a role, but you need to be looking at secondary theft recovery tracking rather than telematics for that side of it. But there is absolutely, in the beauty of the CSER scheme, forensic marking, the criminal gangs that we are dealing with now in the UK, every JCB from 2012 onwards has a CSER triangle. If it doesn't have one, it's getting seized straight away. So the criminals know to either leave it on and hope that we don't look at it, or they try and come up with some way of hiding it. And as soon as it's hidden, we know that it's not right. The issue does come, and I think that's why what Kevin's doing in Europe is so important for our European colleagues to know that if Europe adopted this as well, then we really would have a much better hit rate for stuff that goes abroad. So it's a combination of things. Nothing is perfect, but as far as the CSER marking goes, that has definitely found its home. And I cannot see at the moment how modern technology gets rid of that. It just helps support what it does.
Brilliant. Thank you, Andy. And again, thank you, Jan, for your questions. I think he's covered it there. We haven't got any other questions to answer live. So that just remains for me to say, clearly, theft and fraud is not going away. Please have a look at what steps you can take to protect yourself and to protect your businesses. I'd like to thank all of the speakers, Mark, Andy, Dave, and Kevin. Thank you for your insights and expertise. If anybody wants any more information on insurance, NCAT, the CSER scheme, or anybody in the UK wants to get involved with the SITS group, the Combined Industry Theft Solutions, please drop me a line. Please get in touch with me at IPAF, and we'll help you out. Just remains for me to say thanks all for joining, and wish you all a good afternoon, evening, or morning, depending on where you're watching this from. Thank you all.
Thanks, Richard.